Testing, testing, testing. JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. April 9th, 2024. Gonna try and talk about some new things today and not rehash some of the things I talked about the last couple sessions. Talk about the market CPI data tomorrow. Talk about some of the names I added stars yesterday. Talk quick about RILY. Don't want to talk too much about that. A quick update on DELL. Talk about SC Limited. And go from there, intuitive surgical. But first, talk about the markets. You can look, SPY all the way up to 520.75, and then that was right at the open. And at about 10:30 or so, we just had a drop from 519 nonstop down to 514.35 on the SPY. Found a little bounce, and we've been chopping in the 517, 516 range ever since. No news really to speak of. No catalyst, no Fed speak, no data points. It seemed like maybe someone did a little repositioning ahead of data tomorrow. Who knows? But thankfully, we didn't come down and test the lows from last Thursday. I think we hit 512.97 or so before bouncing. That 512.50, a big spot. So depending on what happens with the data tomorrow, if we break through 512.50, even this afternoon, I might get a little worried. And then I think that 504 handle on the SPY is kind of like the line in the sand. Then I would get worried about we're going to endure some kind of correction, and then you'll have the sell in May and go away, folks tooting their horns over this weekend and things like that. So hopefully find some footing. CPI comes in somewhat in line or cooler than expected. The Fed minutes coming out at 2 o'clock eases some concerns that the Fed's not turning too hawkish. And then we could chop around until Friday, and then we get the Q1 earnings season with the banks to kick things off and go from there. If not, then you have some worry, right? So then the last month or so, it seems like we've come up to the 524 spot, 524.50 or so on the SPY 3 or 4 times since the start of March, and you start looking at the chart, and almost you can make the case that it's topping a little bit. And it happened at the end of December too, little pull, then upward. So just things I don't want to see if the CPI. That's why I kind of want to see CPI come in cooler than expected or in line, because then we could kind of squish that and maybe work our way back into the 520s on the SPY. So that's the markets and the VIX, right? So the VIX, I posted on the watch list this morning. The VIX was down more yesterday than it was on Friday. And Friday we had the 1% rally, and yesterday was a flat session. So that was interesting. And then sure enough, what happens? The VIX spikes today. It's hard to make heads or tails sometimes, but you would think that the volatility would go up into the CPI tomorrow. But Monday was the lowest volume for the S&P since the half session the day after Thanksgiving. So pretty remarkable, and you could see the trading was very light. The choppiness, not good for premiums, especially if you're for weekly strikes that expire this week. Not a good thing, but hopefully we get a little more volatility. Things start, not volatility, but things get settled, and we can start working on a direction, hopefully to the upside. So that's the markets. Quick, I'll talk about DELL, and was it this time? I added the calls Monday. This time last week. Or was it the holiday? Was Monday? I forget. my brain is all jostled. But so then when I ended the calls the next day, I put on the watch list that if DELL went down to 115 or so, I'd close out the position. And then it actually went to the 115th for a minute, and then bounced 116. I think it closed at 117. And then the next day it went on the run into the 120s, and then the next day was 136. That was Thursday before pulling back with the rest of the market. So it pretty much had a $21 swing in 48 hours. I'm not saying the same thing happens here, but DELL, I think it's going to continue to be volatile. And I think last week opened the eyes to some folks who were not aware of DELL as kind of under the radar AI boom play. So, unfortunately, it succumbs to the pressure when MCSI, Supermicro, and NVIDIA sell off. But I'm still bullish on AM. I still think it heads to 150. I locked. I took the profits last week on the April strikes because they were nice bags, right? 7 bags, 6 bags, 400%. And then I took some of those profits and just put them into the May strikes so I can hold them risk-free. It takes the emotion out of the trade. DELL, and hopefully it doesn't go much further here, but looks like it found the bottom at 122 or so, 121. So it's in here nearly almost at 123. And then if we find some footing with the market, I think could be back over 130 tomorrow, and then so on and so forth. So that's kind of the thought process there. Yeah, the calls are in the red. Am I going to add some more? Probably not. Typically what I do if a position goes against me and I'm holding on to the position for a target, I will go and add later dated strikes or lower strikes. I typically am not one to average down. So I'm not going to, I probably, if I do add anything, I would do lower strikes. If, let's say, DELL just continues to consolidate here in the 120s over the next couple sessions. If not, I'll hold the 165s. That's kind of the plan, and I'll probably stick to the plan for now unless something changes. So that's DELL. Intuitive Surgical sold off yesterday. No news right at the open, down to 383, despite the the Johnson & Johnson Shockwave deal last week. I thought for sure that Intuitive Surgical will be trading in the 400s already. It's not. Then after hours yesterday, it was actually gapping. There was a bid. I think they went all the way up to 392. I don't know if there was someone just trying to acquire shares after hours, or some fund had to rebalance, or I have no idea. But then again, this morning was gapping. There was no analyst upgrades. Stifel upgraded their price target, but that was early yesterday morning. So I don't think that has anything to do with it. Then today it goes almost up to 390, even when the market was selling off, and now it's chopping around here. I'm still bullish. I think it still heads to 400 this week. Of course, the CPI is the wild card. So if the CPI hotter than expected, you probably throw that out the window. But I like the risk reward. Again, similar to what I'm going to do with DELL, the difference here is my Intuitive Surgical calls are weeklies, but I'm probably just going to stand pat on what I have, because Intuitive Surgical is one of those names that could be up 3% tomorrow, and the calls are back to life. So I'll just continue to hold those strikes. SE Limited, back up at 57 and change right after the open, then back down, then back over it, and here it is right here at 57 bucks. It seems like it's been struggling to hold the gains and then fades into the end of the session. I'm hoping that it finally, this is one of those days it finally starts to hold the gains and then close over 57, and maybe we can get some follow through tomorrow. Why don't my charts not working here? Sorry about this, folks. Yeah. So this will be 4 sessions of road to the upside on SE, but it's not moving fast enough for the option premiums to really start to go. But if it gets over 60, then you have 6250 is kind of the the area it hit back at the start of March. If it hits that and breaks, it could go 65 quick. So really like this name. I think there was some news this morning. I think I saw it yesterday too. NetEase, which is the gaming company in China, they got approval for 12 games, something like that. And SE has three branches of their business, right? They have the digital payments, they have the e-commerce, and then they have gaming. So I don't know if that's some of the reason why the stock soared out of the gate this morning. A lot of regulation in China in regards to games, apps, things like that. And NetEase, you've seen over the past, anytime there's some kind of restrictions in place, they restricted the amount of time kids could be on playing games over a week. I think it was like 2 hours. NetEase sold off on NetEase. There's a lot of different things that go on in the gaming sector in China. It's heavily regulated. So when they lift some restrictions, that usually bodes well for some names. And you can see NetEase is up nearly 3% today. So that's maybe some reason why SE Limited, is higher. Still love that name for upside. So that's SE. TLRY this morning. I've mentioned a couple times, and people keep asking about TLRY because I was bullish the name last year when they did that acquisition with Anheuser-Busch. But this morning it came out, revenues were good, huge growth in their beer business, IPAs, things like that. But I guess it missed estimates, and then they were forecasting to be cash flow positive this year, and then they pulled that back. So I think that's some of the reason why the stock is selling off. Supposedly it had asset sales that aren't coming through. I don't know the whole story, but unfortunately it pulls the rest of the sector down. So ACB and CGC are down today, but they're bouncing. And I think, hopefully they get into the green, but only down 6%. And well, I should say only, but these stocks have been up 30%, 40% in a given day. So to see them only give back a little bit of those gains, I think that bodes well. Still love these guys for upside. I keep looking at ACB to add more strikes on top of my 7s. Maybe I'll wait till tomorrow. Once it finally shows signs of resuming that uptrend, I'll probably look to get some strikes there, and I'll just hold the rest of my CGCs, the April 10s and the May 15s. That's CGC. Not really going to talk here about RILY, but as I put on the rant last week, and when I added the calls, this is a hero zero play, so it's either going to squeeze. It's going to be 40, 50, 60 bucks, or it could be, if they don't come up with a filing and there's some adverse news, the stock could fall. So my calls will either be up quite a lot, or they might be bidless. Lucky enough to see the squeeze yesterday after I got off audio, went from 24 to 27.31. There was no news, no catalyst to speak of. It's just a huge short interest, right? So lock some of my 30s in for over 100%. I added some 35s. Still plenty of time. The more I look, and the Nasdaq will have their updated short interest today after the close, and that's a lagging indicator because it's 15 days behind. But I still think it'll bring some color to, did they add more shorts? Right? Is the short interest even higher than that? And to think that 76% of the float is held short, it's like, how is there trading shares, right? And then it's been on the regulated short, what is it, the reg short list. So I forget, I don't know if it's the regulated short, RE, let me see if I can find the exact wording, right? The regulation short list, right? How do you spell that? What is it? Oh yeah, the regulation SHO threshold security list. So what that is when you're supposed to settle stock in 3 days. When they don't get settled, typically it means that someone's short the stock naked, meaning they sold shares they don't own. So it's naked shorts. So when stocks typically get on that list, it means people have shorted the stock that don't own the shares. I'll bring this back into today, but one of the ringleaders of this short right now on RILY was shortoverstock.com. And that's really when it first came to a head, was the Overstock.com CEO went nuts because his stock was getting pummeled despite his underlying business being fine because they were short the stock. Not only were they short the stock, there were accusations and claims and probably a lot of validity to the claims that there was a huge naked short on the stock, meaning not only were people selling, not only were they short, but people are also double selling on top of the double selling, meaning they sold shares they don't have. I don't know how you do that, but people do it. And there's ways to do it. And that's why if you look at RILY has been on, coincidence or not, has been on the regulation SHO threshold list since they started their bear attack on RILY starting in November. Coincidence? I don't know. Crazy stuff. I mean, it's pretty odd to find that most of the stocks you see on that are typically micro cap names, penny stocks, things like that. You don't see it on a company that does $1.6 billion in revenue. So, take what you weigh from what I'm saying. I don't know, but I don't think the short squeeze is done. I think they continue to try and pressure this down. It almost seems like they're desperate that April 19th, which is the expiration for April options. I think it's April 19th, right? The 10th is, yeah. It seems like they're pressured to try and get this down to a certain price by that date, because I think there's going to be consequences if they don't, financial consequences, margin calls. I don't know. Supposedly one of the ringleaders is going on Hedge Eye today to talk about gosh knows what. So anyway, so that's my thought process there. I'm not going to get into the minutia of the stock or what have you. I just see an opportunity I think I could take advantage of. Already locked some of those 30s in. I think it gets back over 27 before the week's out, if not higher. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I move on. That's how you control your risk, is by doing the options, right? If you have $500,000 in the position on RILY in the common stock and it sells off 50%, you're in big trouble, right? So hopefully if you have that, then you've been selling. I mean, a great trade too is if you had the common stock. Right now the premiums are jacked. If you go into the May options, I think it's a 50% premium on the implied move on the options. So if you have the guts, you can buy the stock and then sell covered calls, and then just collect the premium, and you hope it just stays flat, right? All right, so that's RILY. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. SE. Oh, NNOX. They had news this morning. They're getting into South Korea. I'm not sure if that's why the stock started to rally in the morning. Again, another name with high short interest. It actually went up to 1135, which is almost right. That 1139 handle went last week when I got the May strikes. Still love this name. At some point it's going to have a multi-day massive run to the upside. Unfortunately, it's just stalling here. So it's getting tight too. The Bollinger Bands are getting tight on NNOX. Hopefully this thing starts to break out soon. AVAV, I don't know if I did it on my rant yesterday, but this one also looks like it's ready to go. I was watching all day yesterday. Thankfully I didn't add any calls yesterday. Down 3% here today, but look how tight that's winding up. I think it heads back up, similar to what DELL did. Retest that earnings high at some point, all the way up to 185. It's one of those divisive names. There's folks who think AVAV, their drone is garbage. They used to post videos of it looked like someone manufactured it at home and taped a bomb to it, right? That's pretty much what those videos look like. And who knows what the reality is of it or not, if they were true. But it all does is instill some fear and gives the opportunity to folks maybe who are short to profit from that. I don't know. But At some point, maybe I'll look for calls on that one. Talked about the pot names. I'm not really going to talk too much about these GLP-1s. I mean, turn all the way up to 580 again today, and then back into the red. Altimmune down here at 825, just not doing nothing. GPCR, which actually looked good this morning, it was up into 44s. That's selling off, and then VKTX as well. It seems like people's focuses went to different names after these big runs. I don't think the runs are done with the GLP-1 names, and probably it's going to take some catalyst or M&A for those to really start getting going. That's that CDLX this morning had Needham upgrading the stock, well, giving a price target upgrade from 17 to 15. Stock back over 15 for the first time in a couple sessions, and then gave back pretty much all the games, reversed almost $1 from the highs. Well, actually $1, 15.23 down to 14.19. I still like this one. It looks like it needs another kick. Maybe it's some news. Clifford So's an inside buy, another analyst upgrade. But I think this is much higher in the coming months. And I may start looking for some calls, not May strikes, but further out to encompass their earnings. If you look at their previous earnings, their next quarter is probably going to be, let's see if I can pull it up. Sorry, folks. Yeah, so they reported earnings on, it's probably going to be around the first week of May. So the Mays might encompass it. They reported earnings last year on May 2nd, May 4th, and then the year before May 2nd. So it's probably going to be that week. And if we start looking at the Mays, wow, so the Mays might encompass earnings. Yeah, so first or second week of May. So that might work. So, all right, so maybe I'll look to get those. I'm waiting for 15 to hold. No reason to, I still have some April strikes. I'm not going to rush into stuff. Again, I put on a watch list at the end. There's not, I wouldn't call tomorrow a binary event, but it doesn't make sense to get too aggressive, especially when I don't really have, I don't have anything much in the way of hedge-wise on via puts, but I don't have too much weekly positions anyway. So you saw what happened Thursday. Thursday was a horrible day. I'm in plenty of calls. Market starts to fall. I got those Avago calls. Thankfully, was able to lock some in for profits. But then the next day, it was like the market went nuts, and I was able to harvest lots of calls. And that happened on Wednesday as well. So hopefully we get some deja vu here. Today is kind of not the Thursday or the Tuesday of last week, and then we can find some footing and head higher tomorrow and then into the end of the week. I think that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. Rock and roll.